Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, I'm your humble host. Do y'all mean the revolution? And it's all bad. It is no good news, y'all. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, I've been monitoring the situation while I was at work. Just walked through the door maybe 40 minutes ago. Very shocked. I haven't felt this way since they murdered Gaddafi in Libya. I feel the same way. I'm stunned. I can't believe it. Syria has fallen. Damascus is in the hands of the head choppers. You know, I don't know what happened. Putin noticed a bunch of double crossings going on in the Middle East. And there's no way they could have did this unless Putin decided to free his hands of the Middle Eastern backstabbing. But I know he wouldn't lead the fate of the Christians to the head choppers. But this is happening fast, so I'm going to bring it to y'all as I get it. World War III could be on the line. Iran, they have to respond. But something shocking has happened. History books will talk about this day. The legendary city of Damascus. If you got a Bible, open it up. Do you know about Damascus? What happened on the road to Damascus? Do you know about the story of Saul to Paul? Do y'all remember when Saul became Paul? That was on the road to Damascus. Stay with me. I remember the head chopper saying that they want to find the tomb of John the Baptist. Now, I'm not saying there is a tomb, but allegedly the Syrians say that they had the tomb of John the Baptist. I remember the head chopper saying that they was going to find that tomb, and they were, because any Christian tombs and all that get your head chopped off, and they got to destroy that stuff. You know, you're an infidel. They don't like that type of shit. So what's happening right now is very strange to me. You know, I know Iran can't go out like this. You know, and I don't know what's going to happen to the Christians in the Middle East now. The head choppers is in charge.
Breaking news right now at 11 is Syria appears to have fallen. Just a few minutes ago, we told you about the situation in Syria. Now Syria's prime minister says he is ready to hand the government over to the opposition. According to the Associated Press, the prime minister did not address reports that the president has left the country.
Now, that particularly, what news we watched tonight, I'm going to have to choose from because I really can't stomach too much of their gloating. They so happy, you know, that this happened. Bashar al-Assad has nobody to blame but his goddamn self. You know, okay, let's check on this because I'm hearing that he might be dead. Bashar al-Assad might be dead. I'm hearing that his plane went down near Salute. Yeah, I seen that. Salute everybody. I'm hearing that his plane went down. I'm confused. So I really can't update y'all on too much because I'm shocked that this happened so fast. The Syrian army laid down. They refused to fight. So I know when Russia and Iran seen that, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. We can't do all the dying. But the Syrian army laid down. They gave up their leader, you know. But Russia still has bases there. Russian soldiers still there. It's a very tricky situation.
More updates. Now, the breaking development that we are tracking very closely is that the plane reportedly carrying Assad disappeared from radar. The plane just dropped from an altitude of over 3,650 meters to 1,070 in a few minutes, just outside Lebanese airspace, north of Akkar. In fact, viewers, what you can see is that the plane, which was in the territory for a few minutes and traceable.
Russia got to explain this. I know they got a good reason, but they got to explain this. The hell with their military base. I want to know, they are the protectors of the Christians. They got to explain why would they leave the Christians in the hands of the head choppers, unless backroom deals been made that they will not chop the heads of the Christians off. That's the only reason Putin would allow Assad to be overthrown, if they said they was going to chop the heads off of the Christians and they just was going to rule in an Islamic fashion. That's it. That's it. That's serious business. But Putin gonna have to explain why would he allow this. Iran gonna have to explain why the hell would they allow this. That is Syria. It's in the hands of Al Qaeda. Syria had advanced weapons. See, this is serious business. The Syrians had advanced weapons. They just chose not to fight. Come on, man.
Then suddenly went missing. As you can see on your screen, that this is the Syrian aircraft which went missing, as Assad, in fact, was inside it, and it remains to be seen how
this reminds me of Gaddafi
next
being killed.
Escalation of seizing of control of homes results into, in fact, the reply from the opposition forces. All right, joining me live on the broadcast is my colleague Brian once again. Brian,
the same people who put black people in cages and sold them into slavery once they killed Gaddafi. These are the same people. That's why I'm gonna do a whole lot of. They're not finna gloss over that shit while they celebrating. These people don't like black people like that. They'll go look what they do in Africa. These people can't. They feel like we're supposed to be their servants, and you're gonna be serving them up under Islam and nothing else. This is crazy to me that this is actually happening. Boy, 2020, you talking about 2024, 2025 going to be a hell of a year. If this is how it's ending with the seizure of Damascus, the ancient Christian city has been seized by the terrorists. Wow.
The breaking development that we are tracking is that the whereabouts of the country ruler are unknown. The plane has dropped from nearly 4,000 altitude to 1,000, and it has lost the trace as it has went untraceable. What is the latest that you are tracking in this regard? It is in fact very concerning given the intensity of the information that we are tracking.
Well, definitely, Simran, very importantly, the Syrian president has fled Damascus on this very plane for an unknown, location. And that's according to the two senior,
He ain't Gaddafi. Gaddafi refused to run. Gaddafi said, I'm going to die in the land my daddy was buried in. My granddaddy was buried in. Gaddafi died with the golden gun. We can see a video of Gaddafi getting beat. He refused to run. Plenty of African leaders, even the South African leaders, they came and asked Gaddafi to leave with them on the plane. NATO was going to allow that. The Arab leaders were going to allow that. Gaddafi said, hell no. Run from who? And run to where? Assad is a fucking coward. I hope he got bumped off on that plane.
Syrian army officers that were even staying, and it was also said that there were hours later that rebels announced that they had gained complete control of the key city of Homs after only a day of fighting. Yes, it is, a very important development also that was.
Hold on, Zubru, you might be right. This all shocking to me, like I say, for y'all who just getting here, I'm just stepping into the house, getting off work. I've been paying attention, been trying to keep up with this story. I couldn't believe it. I'm shocked. But if he tried to make a deal, and if he tried to make a deal instead of Russia in the back and Iran in the back, because they allowed this to happen. I don't care what nobody can say. Iran allowed this to happen and Russia allowed this to happen. They allowed this dude to lose his throne. But they gonna have to understand, it ain't just Assad. You've lost Syria. The only way you get to give Hezbollah weapons is through Syria. The only way Hamas is fighting in Palestine is through Syria. If that is over, then the game is over.
Hezbollah was happening in Syria for a very long time. And now, yes, it has, the Syrian army has also commanded to tell the officers that Assad's rule has been ended as well. And this very, this has also been said that the Syrian army command has notified officers that President Bashar al-Assad's rule has ended following this very lightning rebel offensive. And also, earlier also Assad flew out of Damascus for this very unknown destination for today. Two senior army officials also said that the rebels said that they have entered the capital with no sign of any army deployment. There were thousands in cars and on foot that was congregated at a main square in Damascus, waving and chanting freedom. Witnesses even said that they are celebrating with the Syrian people that the news of freeing the prisoners and releasing the teens and announcing that the end of era of injustice in the Sednaya prison as well. So yes, and even this very plane also, where Bashar al-Assad was trying to flee as rebels enter Damascus unopposed as well. And this incident, and even the destination is still unknown. That happened, and even in the
these people already said they looking for the tombs of any Christians. They want all the Christian artifacts. They're gonna destroy it. I'll never forget when they was first trying to take over Syria in 2011. They said they was looking for the head of, if you might look it up, the so-called head of John the Baptist is supposed to be in Syria, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm not saying that's true, but from what the world is saying, they're saying the head of John the Baptist and his tomb or whatever is supposed to be in Syria. I remember the head choppers saying they were looking for that tomb. They want to destroy anything biblical. This is crazy that this is happening right before our eyes.
Well, are also encouraging Syrians living abroad to return to free Syria as well.
All right, Brian, I'll request you to kindly stay on with me on the broadcast.
No, I'm not bullshitting. This is some end of the world type shit. It's Damascus has fallen, nigga. That's a key word. Damascus has fallen. This is crazy, man. That's why I say I'm over here trying to get a feeling for what the fuck is going on, because I'm not supposed to be we're not supposed to be talking about this. We're not supposed to be talking about Syria fell today. Syria has fallen. And Damascus, an ancient city, man. All you know, if you don't know, you don't know.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is confronting an unprecedented crisis as his regime teeters on the brink of collapse. The Assad family has dramatically fled Syria, signaling the potential end of a decades-long authoritarian rule. According to the Wall Street Journal, Assad's wife Asma and their 3 children have escaped to Russia, while his brothers-in-law have traveled to the United Arab Emirates. It's a stark indication of the regime's rapidly deteriorating situation. Syrian government forces have lost control of critical territories, with local armed groups now controlling more than 90% of Dara province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reports widespread withdrawals of regime forces from multiple key cities. Rebel groups, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, are advancing towards Homs and potentially Damascus, with their leader Abu Muhammad al-Jolani explicitly stating their goal is to overthrow the Assad regime. This military momentum suggests a potentially transformative moment in Syria's prolonged conflict. Russia, a longtime Assad supporter, has begun evacuating military assets from Homs to Damascus. The Russian embassy has advised its citizens to leave Syria, indicating a significant shift in their strategic approach to the conflict. International diplomatic efforts are emerging, with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan attempting to contact Assad to discuss Syria's future. However, these overtures have been rebuffed, further isolating the embattled president. A source close to the Kremlin has revealed that Moscow does not plan to rescue Assad, particularly as his army continues to abandon its positions. This withdrawal of support could be the final blow to the regime's stability. The humanitarian implications are profound. Tens of thousands of Alawites are fleeing Homs ahead of approaching rebel forces, creating a potential humanitarian crisis that could reshape the region's demographic landscape. Iranian-backed militias have also withdrawn from their positions in Deir ez-Zor, moving towards the Syrian-Iraqi border. This strategic retreat further weakens Assad's already fragile military position. The collapse of the Assad regime is driven by multifaceted challenges that extend beyond simple military defeats. Geopolitical shifts, including Russia's involvement in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas conflict, have diverted international attention and strategic resources away from Syria. This global distraction has created a unique opportunity for rebel groups to intensify their offensive. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, and local opposition groups have capitalized on this strategic moment, launching coordinated attacks that exploit the regime's vulnerabilities. Their strategic advances are not just military maneuvers, but represent a comprehensive effort to dismantle the Assad government's infrastructure and territorial control. Multiple intelligence sources suggest that the regime's collapse is increasingly likely due to systemic failures. These include catastrophic military desertions, a complete breakdown of command structures.
Iran could be next. Why they sitting there? Why Iran sitting there playing games, letting Syria fall? Fuck Assad. They should have never allowed this. They should have never allowed this. They should have put a puppet ruler in charge of Syria. Are they out of their mind? See, Iran, the Persians. I told you. See, this is an ancient game. Putin knows what he's doing, but I'm just like, damn, who gonna protect the Christians in the Middle East? You know, Iranians seem like they just gonna go back and protect their border of Iran. This is crazy.
And the erosion of international support. The once powerful Syrian military now resembles a fragmented force more capable of retreat than resistance. Regional dynamics further complicate Assad's survival prospects. Neighboring countries like Jordan and Turkey are recalibrating their diplomatic approaches, sensing an imminent regime change. While formal diplomatic channels remain cautious, behind-the-scenes negotiations are likely exploring potential transition scenarios. The potential power vacuum presents significant risks. Extremist groups, regional militias, and various opposition factions could compete for control, potentially transforming Syria into a fractured landscape of competing interests.
This is why, you see, we're learning something here at Cult Figure TV. Even me, I'm learning something valuable here about this Middle Eastern hornet's nest, where you can lose everything, and it's not really friends, you know, and allies. You know, people are dealing with each other on temporary basis. This is crazy, you know. Putin, I know he didn't see this coming, because if Syria goes up in flames, he's lost it all in Syria. This was his golden goose. This was his crown jewel. You can't trust these Arab nations like that. The people, I have no problem with the Arab people, but I'm seeing now, what Arab nation can you trust? None of them. None of them did shit. As Hamas, as Palestine was getting genocided, they didn't do shit. Beg Putin, beg the Persians. Iran is not an Arab. I'm talking about the Arab nations. All they good at is bringing torment to Africa. See, that's what they love to do. They getting bullied by the whites. They scared of Israel. And this is true. The Arabs are scared. The Arab governments are scared of Israel. They should be. What we're seeing right now, this should be happening in Saudi Arabia. You're probably seeing the Saudi overthrow, but the Americans ain't gonna allow that. You see, Americans are kill protesters or anything to keep these people in power. See, Russia, they want to kill. No, see, Russia, Putin is not a killer. This is what the man just don't want to kill a lot of people. He don't. And then when you don't want to do a lot of murdering, then shit, this could happen to your ally. See? You gotta murder.
This scenario threatens not just Syria's stability, but could trigger broader regional instability.
I wonder why he wasn't blowing those cities up. As soon as the terrorists coming in, America would have blew those man, but them cities wouldn't been standing no more before you come take the capital. Hell, wouldn't have been no homes. They took Aleppo. Wouldn't have been no Aleppo if it was America. Hell with the ancient city and all that type. No, see, Putin, you know, that's why. See, when you're dealing with chaos, right? We in the world ruled by demonic forces, man. You can't be so. We learn from Putin. Putin is too righteous for his own good, and that can cost you in this goddamn world. Putin got to get up.
Humanitarian organizations are preparing for massive population displacement. The potential fall of Damascus could trigger unprecedented refugee movements, with vulnerable communities like Alawites facing immediate risks of persecution and forced migration. As the situation develops, the international community watches closely, understanding that the potential collapse of the Assad regime could fundamentally reshape geopolitical dynamics in the Middle East. The next few weeks may determine the future of Syria and potentially alter the region's strategic landscape. The world stands at a critical juncture.
All the women belong to them now, nigga. That's serious business. They'll take your mama, nigga. That's what's so crazy. What make you laugh, make you cry, though, because it's always happened. It's going to be a lot of blowback on the youth, but they don't care. They just love They just love the right now. Remember, they killed Gaddafi, and then the same terrorists killed Christopher Stevenson, the ambassador to Libya. It's going to happen. You see, they just cheering right now. These head choppers is going to bite the hand that feeds them. That's what they do.
With Syria's future hanging in a delicate balance between potential liberation and potential chaos, the unfolding events will not just redefine Syria's political landscape, but could potentially reset the entire geopolitical equilibrium of the Middle East.
One of the oldest Christian cities in the damn world. Our ancestors used to walk the streets of Damascus. That's what I don't understand. Now the head choppers hate our ancestors. They want to erase history. See, what you understand is them people is on a hunt for artifacts to destroy them, erase history. They think we stupid. That's also their agenda. Like I said, I never forget them rebels are talking about they looking for the tomb of John the Baptist. I'm like, what the hell are they doing that for? That's what they said they were looking for in Syria in 2011. They looking for the head of John the Baptist. If I'm not right, wasn't John the Baptist beheaded? Open up the book. So very weird shit is going on, but this is not a game. This is a sign. The end is them, man. You know?
President left Syria to... Syria's army command has reportedly told officers that the rule of Bashar al-Assad has ended. The head of a Syrian opposition war monitor says the president left Syria to an...
If your army come out and say the rule of Bashar al-Assad has ended, that means your army sold you out. That means your army done made deals with the U.S. See, this is crazy. They all made deals with the U.S. and Israel. That's real talk. Russia seen. Russia, oh, shit. Yeah, these motherfuckers, Iran... These people, the Syrians, that made deals with the enemies. You know, the U.S. not above that. The U.S. don't give a damn. They want Assad gone. They'll make deals with everybody else. They're like, okay, we'll take y'all off sanctions, get rid of him, get rid of Russia. We don't want Iran around here. The head chopper's gonna run this place. Don't shoot no missiles at Israel, and y'all will be all right. This is crazy.
Unknown destination as rebels close in on the capture of the capital city of Damascus. Verified footage shows Syrian rebel tanks in one of Damascus's central squares. Rebels say they've entered the capital without any sign of deployment of government forces. Earlier, rebels took control of the central city of Homs, and swarms of government forces have reportedly fled the city towards the Iraq border. The rebel forces continue to take control of large parts of government territory as the Bashar Assad regime nears complete collapse.
That's crazy, and that's cowardice, man. That's what I say. They leave their civilians in the hands of the head choppers, man. The army, some fucking cowards. Bashar al-Assad, man, he a coward. When it came time to look death in the eye, he got scared. Gaddafi didn't. You got to salute Gaddafi, man. He fought like a man, died with his gun in his hand. That's the go. He had to go to gun. They beat him. He had his gun on him when it was time to go. He refused to leave the land of his fathers and leave his people in the hands of the head choppers. The army of Syria running away. Damn, you can't take all your people with you then. If you're gonna run, millions of y'all gotta leave. That's cowardice, but they worry about themselves, man.
After the rebels' surprise insurgency into Aleppo last week. Talks in Qatar have turned to securing a transition of power. The UN Special Envoy for Syria, Yair Petition, says there needs to be an orderly political transition to ensure the country's 13-year civil war does not continue.
They finna carve Syria up. They're finna get carved up. The Turks gonna get a big piece. This is crazy. But they talking about Russia wrong in Ukraine while they carving up Syria. NATO done invaded Syria using terrorists. The U.S. finna keep their oil. That's crazy. But they gonna claim that it's Turkey. They gonna claim that it's Kurdish land. They gonna make the Kurds have a state, which Turkey not gonna go for. They don't give a damn. The U.S. gonna do what they want to do. To hell with Turkey, because where the oil at, that's where the U.S. soldiers is at. You know. This is crazy. They might allow the Russians to keep their little base and their little naval base, and they might tell Putin, get his damn soldiers up out of here before they pay the price. That's serious business. Your guy lost. You got to go.
This must be the start of a process that leads to the realization of the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people and the restoration of the sovereignty, independence, and unity and territorial integrity of Syria. I reiterate my call for de-escalation, for calm, for the avoidance of bloodshed and the protection of civilians in line with international humanitarian law.
Nations in the world.
Well, for more on this developing story, we are joined by Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran in Jerusalem, and our global affairs editor John Lyons is also with us in the studio. John, let's start with you. What is the latest that you're hearing about the whereabouts of the president?
Well, Ruby, it appears that the 54-year regime, the Assad regime in the Arab world, one of the most ruthless in the Arab world, it appears that it's either falling or has fallen. Syrian soldiers, senior army officers have told Reuters that President Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus.
These lies that Bashar al-Assad was one of the most ruthless regimes in the Arab world, that is a damn lie. It was a lie when they said about Gaddafi. It was a lie when they said about Saddam. I'm gonna remind you, in the Middle East, a lot of these nations, you say something against Islam, your ass will get your head chopped off. In Saudi Arabia too, Kuwait too, they'll beat you to death. You say something, apostate, you can say something against the Prophet in Pakistan, you'll get beat to death in the street. You see, if some of these places. If you're a Christian, you keep your goddamn head down and you don't be sticking your chest out and being too proud of your religion. That's just a fact. In Syria, you could be a Christian. It's one of the oldest. That's they call it one of the birthplace of Christianity. You know, Damascus. We all know the stories. So they respected Christians. Christians could live in peace in Syria under Assad and his family. We don't know what's going to happen with these head choppers. But this guy here want people to think Assad was so brutal. Assad was helping Hezbollah, helping Hamas, and helping Iran. That's where he went wrong, and letting Russia come into his country.
Damascus for an unknown destination. The Syrian Prime Minister has said that he remains in his home, but he's ready to help any smooth transition. The location of Bashar al-Assad is not known, but it appears that he has fled. 2,000 or so soldiers have fled across the border into Iraq, essentially in the face of these rebels coming in, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. It looks like the Syrian army essentially put down its guns and ran. It appears the Assad regime has fallen.
Let's go now to Matthew Doran in Jerusalem. Matt, what
the U.S. when they did that shit in Afghanistan, Putin got to take it on the chin like a G. His army that he trained in Syria laid it down, ran like cowards, nigga. Yes, he got to take it on the chin like a G. And what we see, America and Israel, these Zionists, Putin thought they was gonna let him get away with what he was doing in Ukraine. Hell no, he just lost his crown jewel in Syria. I know he never seen this shit come.
reports are you hearing over there?
Ruby, good morning to you, or good afternoon in Australia. It is still very early here, so these reports are still coming through. It's just gone 7 o'clock in the morning in Damascus, 6 a.m. here in Jerusalem. But I think what we are all hearing here is that this has happened incredibly quickly, that these rebel fighters have managed to get to Damascus, have encircled parts of Damascus's suburbs, and that has caused the withdrawal of the Syrian army here. As we just heard from John, we're seeing reports that many thousands have now fled the country, trying to head south and away from this conflict. And it's clear that other countries in this region were expecting something to happen here. Late yesterday, we started seeing reports from the Israeli Defense Forces that it was bolstering its presence in the Golan Heights. This is an occupied part of this region. It is currently occupied by Israel. It is a disputed territory there and borders.
Syrian territory. They stole it. But all that's the Israeli army getting into it with the rebels near the Golan Heights. That is all BS so that Israel could steal more land. Israel gonna say, now we gotta go in and make sure these terrorists. Oh man, this shit is crazy. Israel gonna go in and make sure the terrorists, not shooting at them. They're gonna steal more Syrian land.
What is within the borders of Syria, and the IDF started to send more more troops and more assets into that part of the Golan Heights to ensure that it was monitoring this situation. That was happening a couple of hours ago. So it's clear that there was intelligence flying around that the rebels were gaining in strength, they were gaining in momentum, and after those wins that they have had, those strategic wins that they have had, going through a number of other towns, including Hama just a couple of days ago, and of course Aleppo last week, that surprise attack that really kick-started this renewed push to oust the Assad regime. This has happened incredibly quickly, and the full ramifications are still becoming clear.
Right now, going any further, before that, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus. This is the new alert that we're getting now to an unknown destination. These are informed by 2 senior army officers. Now, it also says that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad boarded a plane and left to an unknown destination. Now, this comes as the war continues in Syria to rage, and the rebels have reportedly surrounded the capital Damascus from all directions. Now, on Saturday, as we know, the rebels made rapid advancements into the outskirts of Damascus and are now present in suburbs of Madamiyah, Darmana, and Daraa. The advancement comes just days after the fall of Aleppo, Homs, and Hama. Now, however, earlier in a statement, the Syrian Defense Ministry alleged that terrorist media platforms were spreading fake news and publishing misleading videos of what's happening in the country. The army had said that it is also strengthening to defenses in the southern of Damascus. Now, this is the new news alert that we're getting in. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus to an unknown destination. And this is according to 2 senior army officers. Now, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad boarded a plane and left to an unknown destination. This, of course, is coming when the war in Syria continues to rage in. Now, earlier, scenes of chaos had unfolded inside Damascus airport, according to CNN report, as Syrian rebel forces continue their lightning advance into the capital city. Now, some footage did show people quickly passing through security checkpoints and rushing through departure gates in attempt to flee the country. Now, this is the latest that we are getting in from West Asia.
This is bad. This is all bad. Then this motherfucker done fled the country. This is crazy. All those years just to leave running and hiding. That's crazy.
All right. Not sure exactly what to say. It looks like this is the last day of the Syria war that I'm going to be reporting on. The Syria war appears to be over. Yesterday, I reported that the government was repositioned around Homs. Homs appears to have fallen, and the Syrian army has apparently moved towards the coast, but Damascus, I've seen reports that Damascus has fallen as well. I saw a report, and I'm following, in terms of the fog of war, I'm following the one procedure in terms of using evidence. It's called the admission against interest. So I'm looking for pro-Syrian government accounts that are describing that are stating where they're at. So when I really worried about Hama was when they said rumors, the Syrian government report was that rumors that the Syrian government or the Syrian army has left Homs are untrue. So they were saying that about Hama when Aleppo was taken. They said rumors about Hama being taken are untrue. They didn't ever say Hama was taken. They just said rumors about Homs were untrue. And now they're saying rumors about the Syrian Arab Army leaving Latakia are untrue. So if you know the map, Latakia is on the coast. And so, I don't know if that's exactly an admission of the loss of Damascus and of Homs, but it reads that way to me. So we have yesterday's map from the IWN, but that's a lot's changed since yesterday, right? So let me see if there's a map. No, all my maps appear to be out of date. Everything that I am looking at right now. I think there's a Syriac. I was looking at Syriac. I showed you the Syriac map the other day, right? This one is out of date, but I'll just show you what's going on this out of date map. How about that? Okay, so we'll zoom. Let me just put it up. There's not much to do without a map, is there? So let's just show you the map. I believe this was yesterday. Although no, it does look like Homs is this is all lost. I think the rebels are in Qusair now. I've seen, and I've also read that the rebels were, as you could see, they were coming from the south. So perhaps they've reached Damascus from the south. They were coming from the south and from the east and from the north. So I think they've reached Damascus, and I believe this is the end. What I've heard from Arya's feed, Aryggeay, Aryggeay, is that there's going to be an address by the new regime in Syria to the country. So this is a new situation. The new government has said they have no problem with Israel. Their problems are with the Shia. Their problems are with Iran. Their problems are with Iran. So I guess this is, and the backing and the weapons and the fuel and everything else come from Turkey. So this is the carve up of Syria. Turkey will take a piece. Israel will take a piece, an additional piece in addition to the Golan Heights. They will surround Lebanon and cut off the supply of weapons to Lebanon, and then the Kurds, the SDF, so far with U.S. backing, have taken parts. The Syrian army handed over parts of the east to the SDF before the HTS, the Turkish-backed groups, took over. So I guess what we're looking at is a partition between HTS, Israel, Turkey, HTS being Turkey, but presumably Turkey will take some of this for themselves as well. And
this the one thing I will say about the Syrian situation, to where the president of Turkey, Erdogan, he right about one thing: Aleppo and Idlib. So those cities was given. See, the French and Britain, they've been same thing they did with Africa. Fake borders have caused many problems, and they did it on purpose. They caused these problems, these fictitious borders, and creating states out of nowhere where they didn't really exist. A lot of this, and this is why Turkey really want Aleppo and some of those places back, because historically they belong to them. And that's where the carving finna go on. And they finna start cutting it up. but the Greater Israel Project. People have to pay attention to that. Israel really want it all for their goddamn self. But with the fall of Syria, which whoever dreamed this would happen, and all of this seemed like, I don't even think that Hamas understood what they did when they attacked Israel on October the 7th. Unless Iran or them totally defeat Israel, then that was a historic and strategic mistake attacking Israel on October the 7th. Because after they attacked Israel on October the 7th, Israel assassinated all of their leaders, all of the leaders of Hezbollah, and have overthrown Assad after October the 7th. So they won't, I know Iran won't say it, Putin won't say it, Hezbollah won't say it. But that was a big fucking mistake. And they have paid dearly for attacking Israel on October the 7th.
Kurdistan. Kurdistan being backed by the U.S. unless and until the U.S. decides to betray them to the Turks, which will, if U.S. and Turkish general foreign policy behavior follows the pattern, will be coming like clockwork. So as far as analysis, recrimination, I don't
not forget that the Iranian president was assassinated in a helicopter crash. They still pretend like it was an accident. I'm on record saying there was no accident. Later on in life, they will report and it will reveal that Israel also, after October 7th, assassinated the president of Iran for that attack.
I'm not big on searching for secret deals. I'm not big on searching for conspiratorial deals. There may well have been, but just I'll just tell you what I think happened here. Okay. I think that everybody, me included, believed that the so-called HTS militants, Turkey-backed jihadis, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, I believed that they were a spent force, that they were contained in Idlib, and that the Syrian state was on its way to rebuilding and eventually taking back and restoring sovereignty over all of historic Syria. That's where I thought things were headed. I thought they would have the help of their allies to do that. And I thought that Turkey was...
But you know what? The U.S. baited Russia to go into Ukraine. That's a fact too. And Putin understands that. They baited him in. They forced him to go into Ukraine. And as he went into Ukraine, he had to pull his best pilots, some of his best generals, and because he had his force in Syria controlling this situation, So strategically, they have gained, and there's some of them right now. They don't give a shit about Ukraine. So what? They tried to steal the trillions of dollars that it didn't work. Well, they got a bigger prize on their goddamn hands now because they got Syria, and now they can cut Hezbollah off, cut Palestine off, cripple Iran's influence in the Middle East. This is Christmas that came early to these people.
I didn't think Turkey was... I thought Turkey was basically non-committal. I thought Turkey was mercurial and non-committal. I thought they were talking a big game, but they were keeping the business ties to Israel. They were feeding Israel and fueling Israel during the genocide, but they were talking tough and threatening to cut ties and angling for advantage. Man, I didn't think they would make
it. Cutthroat. You see, this is a cutthroat business. And Erdogan is a boss, and he playing for keeps. Putin got to deal with him, or he gonna deal with Putin. He not playing. This man, they better see. They always talk about Putin is trying to rebuild the Soviet Empire and the Russian Empire. No, The leader of Turkey is rebuilding the Ottoman Empire right before our face. He's already moved into Somalia and has influence right now. Ethiopia is pissed because what Turkey is doing. He has influence in Libya. He's in different African nations. We just seen what he just did to Syria. No, it's Turkey, a member of NATO, you know, who is rebuilding its empire right before everybody facing. No, they don't want to talk about that. What Turkey is doing.
A big move to commit fully to U.S. Israel. And if I thought that perhaps Russia and Iran and even the Syrian state thought that as well, and were taken genuinely by surprise, that would be surprise number one. And the size and scale of Turkey, you guys, and the location of Turkey should not be missed here. Let me zoom out on the map and just show you what's going on here. Turkey has 85 million people. Just look at this location that it has. Turkey has historically, when there are conflicts between Turkey and Russia, they're indecisive. Turkey is so big and so powerful. It is 85 million people. So much of the drone power that Ukraine is bringing to bear against Russia in this war comes from Turkey. Turkey's building these drones. Turkey has military industry. Turkey has every kind of industry. Turkey even has Syria's industry. They trucked off most of Aleppo's industry in the recent war, about 10 years ago from Aleppo. Turkey has, so just so we understand, the idea of the axis of resistance was Lebanon, Syria, resistance groups in Iraq, which is occupied and controlled by the US, Iran, Yemen, right? And the axis of assistance, or the axis of genocide, whatever, has Israel, Egypt is helping, Jordan is helping, Turkey is feeding, and America ultimately. But when you have Turkey actually becoming a military member of the axis of genocide, you have added a member of this coalition that's on the same scale as Iran. Iran has 90 million people. Turkey has 85 million. And Turkey's much closer. So it's just a major change to the sides that are fighting the war, which means the ability to overwhelm Syria, a Syria that has been fighting since 2011, a Syria that's been under starvation level sanctions since 2011, since anyone trying to do business with them has faced secondary sanctions and every kind of trouble. And as far as solidarity has gone, not so much. So Syria, people, you can say, why didn't Russia and Iran see it coming? They had some kind of guarantees from Turkey. Turkey stands to suffer from breaking its agreements with Iran and Russia. So I suppose there's reason to believe that they were going to stick to the agreement. When they didn't, okay, then it's time to look at making them pay for not complying with their agreement. But this takeover was so fast that there's no time to bring any resources to bear to slow down this assault, to buy time for Syria to get back to even to a containment phase, never mind turning the tide. So they never really got to try to turn the tide. And so Turkey's campaign, Turkey joining, Turkey's surprise, they achieved surprise, and then their warfare was effective. The Syrian army never really got into the fight. They just kept retreating. And so now Syria will be partitioned, and Russia will leave. Russia will have to figure out another way to access the Mediterranean, because that's not going to happen for them now. The resistance, Hezbollah, will be without their supply line.
Damn, the U.S. got their lick back, man. That's crazy. The U.S. got their lick back. Russia got the U.S. kicked out them bases in Niger. $100 million drone base, the biggest drone base, most expensive drone base in the world. We all laughed at the U.S. Little did we know, little did Putin know they was going to get their lick back. He's finna lose his crown jewel, his access to the Mediterranean, his naval base, his bases in Syria. But Putin may get the last laugh, because I know they ready. Russia have a plan for if something like this happened. Now it's the ball in his court, though. He got to do something.
And I think the implications of this for the bigger war will be dire. It's hard to say. It's hard to say more about. It's going to take a long time for these consequences to play out, and so I don't need to. I'm not going to get into all of that tonight. I guess that's it. I guess that's it for tonight. I will get back to.
Look at my boy. He devastated, man. Yeah, all the people who gonna report on this, who stood for the resistance, they shocked. You can't believe this.
شايف خال كله قاعد بطير لهناك. قولكم شوفي ولا الله ما احناش عارفين شو فيه. قلنا لهم المطار صديق ما حد مصدقنا. يا طيي العالم سكرت ارضك يا طيي. المطار وين رايحين؟
be a bad dream for the Christians in Syria, y'all. You know. See what this man is saying.
There have been So here's the map. So that's the map of Syria, and that is the most recent update when it comes to the map of Syria. Mind you, things are changing very rapidly when it comes to the map, and every minute we have new updates on the ground when it comes to the Syrian map. So here are the areas that are now under the armed opposition control. Don't forget, we started off in this area in the Idlib province. Now we have all of these areas under the opposition control, including Homs. Homs has been completely now under the control of the armed Syrian opposition, and we are heading towards Damascus too. But significant things to understand here are what's happening on the borders here. If you look, there have been more controls here, more control coming from the areas. Yeah, this would work. That are traditionally under some of the Kurdish movements. So we're getting closer to Deir ez-Zor and some of these villages that are here. And the Kurdish movements here, Qas, they're called Syrian Democratic Forces. They're backed officially by the United States. And this was the border that the 1,500 Assad forces fled from to Iraq. All of this is now under opposition control. How did they all of a sudden control all of these areas, including Al-Suwaida? Suwaida, you're talking about minorities in Syria, and Dar'a and Sanamain, all of these areas up to the... And now we're talking about it's potentially going to be hours, if maximum maybe days up until they get hold of Damascus. There has been a publication about a control, right, an operations room of the south. So previously we were talking about the opposition coming from the north to the south up to Damascus, but now Damascus is being now the armed groups are coming to Damascus from the south. This was a massive surprise, and in these areas there were individual uprisings in some of them that fell under the umbrella of the armed opposition, including from ethnic minorities inside of Syria, that these areas are very well known for. But before we get into Damascus, here is one of the most significant things that happened. What are they? The fact that they are controlling all of the borders with Israel. They are controlling all of the borders with Israel, the armed opposition groups, right? And this is causing friction between them and Israel. Israel is now deploying forces throughout all of the Golan Heights. And what are they doing? They are, which are occupied Golan Heights because they are Syrian. However, Syria did not, the Assad government did not do anything to get the Golan Heights back. I mean, and there were many reports about a deal being brokered between them and Israel to not do anything. And previous reports that Iraq were willing to help them recapture the Golan Heights, and they did not do that. Unlike when it comes to Egypt, who liberated Sinai Peninsula in following the 1973 war on the 6th of October. What is Israel doing here? They are deploying forces. Israel's deploying forces all across the Golan Heights, and they are having military drills, and they are sending warnings to the armed opposition groups over there. And I wanted to share with you a report coming from Israel confirming these threats and also confirming who is Israel trying to deal with.
See, that's all fake. There's no threats from the head choppers to Israel. They haven't never attempted to do anything to Israel. Israel has been helping them. This is all a ploy. So when Israel steal more Syrian land, they're going to be able to say, well, we have to take this land as a buffer zone to push back these radicals who have seized Syria.
Inside of Syria. So there were a couple of reports here about the bear with me 1 second so I can share this clearly with you. Here we go. So dialogue between the Kurds in Israel. Israel always tries to capitalize on the Kurdish thing, by the way. And a threat to the rebels. The Kurdish stronghold, they contacted Israeli officials. According to this report, Israel sent a message to the rebels in southern Syria that the IDF would act forcefully if they dared to cross the border. Not only that, but there was another report saying what? Saying that Israel actually conducted an attack. They attacked the rebels in what they labeled as a very unusual move, an unusual incident where the IDF intervened and did what? Syrian rebels, according to Israel, again, their excuse, Israel's excuse, that rebels attacked a UN post in the buffer zone that was agreed upon between...
See, Iran can sit back and wait if they want to. They can sit back. They should have told Syria to attack. They should have told Hezbollah. They should have did all out attack, but shoulda, woulda, coulda, because now Hezbollah has been crippled. Syria has been overthrown, and it's just an open road. Now they just got an open road to Iran now. Iran better get those nuclear weapons because they definitely next.
The Assad government in 1974 and Israel. So they're claiming that the rebel forces attacked it, and they went to protect the UN. Oh, how generous is that? People massacring infants in Gaza and targeting UN posts and destroying UNRWA schools, saying that we want to protect the UN. An IDF spokesman updated on the incident in the area of the village of Khadr near Majd al-Shams. An attack by armed men was detected, and the IDF assisted the UN force. This is the excuse, okay? But what we can clearly understand that something happened there. Explosions were heard in the Golan, firing by our forces, according to them. In the shadow of the developments in Syria, the army emphasized the deployed forces are reinforced at the front. This is the main reason for the military intervention. And again, they are saying that we tried to protect a UN post. Was it a rebel attack or a limited invasion to areas that they don't necessarily recognize with Israel? Because, we're talking about it's a new reality soon. Or is Israel trying to test the borders with them? Are they trying to test the borders? Because now, like the map shows, they are controlling all of the borders with the occupying entity over here. All of that is opposition inside of Syria. But let's go back to that article that I was talking to you about when it comes to some of the Kurdish movements. So they said Israel sent a message to the rebels in southern Syria that the IDF will act forcefully if they dare to cross the Israel-Syria border. or the 1974 line. This means that a direct channel has been opened between Israel and opponents of Bashar Assad's regime, who are the Kurdish movements. Saturday News Khan evening said that there were initial talks between the Kurds in Syria and official representatives inside of Israel. So, and they're quoting here, Foreign Minister Gideon Saar said that Israel is seeking to form an alliance with minorities in Syria and Iraq, including the Kurds. However, it might be too late for that if they're trying to do that. Why? Because now you're talking about a rapid expansion of the opposition armed forces across of Syria and almost controlling Damascus, and then some of the Kurdish controlled movements. And now, mind you, another thing here, the Democratic Syrian forces, they are fully backed by the United States. And there have been reports, well, Donald Trump is saying we don't have nothing to do with Syria now, we shouldn't have anything to do with Syria. There are reports that the United States is going to lift the support, and that will leave them with the Syrians. But the reconciliatory tone coming from the armed opposition is also open to the Kurdish movements in East Syria. And again, there were some indications that they would be willing to have a one Syrian state where there's, coexistence and liberty. And mind you, again, you might be talking about a one state with small, federal states, right? Or small states that have a level of autonomy, which is an example that we have in many other countries, but albeit in one border. Okay. I know all of that might be a lot to kind of sink in, and there's a lot more to talk about, by the way. But the key question is, why did the Iranians and Hezbollah take the position of this position with Bashar al-Assad? There are many arguments to that. Firstly, for people to understand the relationship between Iran and Syria, it goes back for a very long time. Syria helped Iran in a limited manner when it comes to their war with Iraq in the 80s. And they also viewed Syria as a strategic connection between them and Lebanon. And Lebanon and Iran, they have historical ties, by the way, when it comes to their scholars, communities, people, and what have you. Neither Iran nor Hezbollah agree with the way the Syrian government used to work, like, one party, and you're talking about a religious interpretation, within Islam when it comes to Iran and Hezbollah. And they had their differences with the Assad government. There were differences previously between the Iranians and the Assad government, and there were previous differences between Hezbollah and Assad. And there have been conflicts, bloody conflicts between Hezbollah and Assad forces back in the 80s. And many of them have been clarified by or spoken about by one of the previous Secretary Generals of Hezbollah, who not many people talk about, Subh al-Tufaili, who heavily criticized Hezbollah for their participation against the Syrian revolution at the beginning of 2011. He had another speech recently as well, where he advised the people, the Hezbollah members, not to have any participation and apologize and have some sort of a reconciliation when it comes to Syria, because we're talking about a new phase and we're talking about a new reality. And he posted a video. It was, of course, in Arabic, and I'm not going to translate all of it. But during that video, he mentioned that we want what's good for the Syrian people. We shouldn't have ever participated in Syria before. And I think Hezbollah should make the right decision now by, confirming that we'll apologize for the past, for what you have done in Syria in particular. Let's all focus on building Syria and building unity, having a state for everyone that works for, and also works for the resistance as well. Now, they've had these differences before, but they could have their interests being implemented inside of Syria with Bashar al-Assad. But there were many assassinations inside of Syria. Many assassinations of figures from Hezbollah and figures from the IRGC. Hezbollah lost Imad Mughniyi in around 2008. The IRGC constantly suffers losses, and there were suspicions before that, well, someone is saying something from within, because we're not talking about one occurrence. We're talking about something that has been repeated time after time, despite the interest being met when it comes to, for example, the channeling of weapons or officials or advisors to Hezbollah, and having offices of the some of the resistance movements inside them. Because again, that doesn't really say that the actual government itself is a resistance government. Like the Hamas offices, well, officially still are in Qatar. You can't call Qatar a resistance country, but Hamas offices are there. Like Taliban had offices there when they were talking with the Americans about a peace process in Afghanistan. Did they see something from the Assad government or from Assad directly that they did not like? We were talking yesterday and the day before about proposals or observations coming from Israeli journalists and Lieutenant Colonel who's resigned, Amit Yagur, yesterday, saying that we might have to help Assad because we prefer an enemy we know over an enemy we don't know. But now they have no chance to do anything for Assad, by the way, because there's a rapid expansion. It's like they have no... it's almost unstoppable what's been happening clearly. And again, that was confirmed by the Hezbollah report previously, that the expansion coming from the armed opposition has been dramatic and very well prepared for. It has been a very significant and very calculated campaign. They're admitting it's a campaign. It's called the Turns of Aggression, and that they prepared for it for over a year, for them to control so much territory when it comes to Syria so quickly, starting off at Idlib and all of a sudden Hama, Homs, now south of Homs, close to the Lebanese borders, and then going all down, going up to Damascus from the southern parts. There were, proposals from Israel, or thoughts that we might have to support Bashar al-Assad. And senior figures in Israel, we might have to support it, because we don't know these people. We don't know these people who are coming. Again, unlike the narrative of some people who talk about the Syrian situation, that you're talking about only CIA-backed operatives and what have you. So there was another report in Bloomberg that said that actually Assad now is proposing to deal with the US, is making overtures to the US. Says he's open to a deal. What's that deal? To cut the ties with Iran. Well, Iran could have clocked onto it before you. Iran could have clocked on to that fact before Assad made that proposal, or could have seen things going there, and therefore they did not provide the support. Otherwise, how can you explain that there was no participation all of a sudden from Iran, and the change of tone when it comes to Hezbollah, and the lack of support from Iraq and Russia? What is Russia saying, by the way? Have you heard Lavrov? Sergei Lavrov he had a long statement in which, and he had meetings with Turkey as well, where he was talking about the developments in the region. What did he say? He said, we are looking for an implementation of international resolutions and seeking to stop the bloodshed in Syria, as if nothing happened. Sergei Lavrov. We fought in Afghanistan and then we dealt with the Taliban. Why would Lavrov say that? Lavrov is preparing the ground to deal with the new Syrian opposition. We had blows with Taliban before, and then we dealt with Taliban. What does that tell you? That tells you that you're looking at a new reality, a reality that came as a shock, has been imposed, took everyone by surprise, gave the reassurances that are needed primarily for the Syrian people, or the majority of the Syrian people, or they say saying to all of the Syrian people, but you will still have people, of course, not supporting them. And then to the international key players when it comes to Syria, primarily the sides that they knew participated before to help the Assad government in the form of, well, Russia and Iran and Hezbollah and some of the Iraqis, but Iran basically, because Iran calls the shots. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with more questions to be asked in the future. Firstly, when is this going to end? There have been reports about Assad fleeing. There have been official confirmations or denial that he has. There was a denial also from the Minister of Defense in Syria saying, don't believe anything you see, it's all propaganda, although we're seeing all of the videos of control inside Homs, inside Halab, in the south. So, I mean, I'm not sure what propaganda he's relating to. And one of the worst things were one of the interviews that one of Bashar al-Assad's main key figures in the army having an interview yesterday while he was drunk. And he was being asked about the situation and what's happening. And he clearly, man, was intoxicated, saying, in the morning, I look at the sun and I see Bashar, and in the night, there comes the moon and I see Bashar. I'm not sure how effective that would be when it comes to the effectiveness of the armed forces that are loyal to Bashar fighting on the ground with this rapid expansion that's happening. Damascus is the last bit. Even if the opposition controls Damascus tonight or tomorrow, there's still going to be a lot of things to be done. Unless that is, agreements have been reached, and clearly the armed opposition has had some sort of understandings with key elements inside of Syria, from the Syrian people to many in the Syrian army. That's why we had so many defecting and so many putting their arms down, putting their weapons down, and just wearing their civilian clothing, and many of them fleeing. Some people are expecting the battle when it comes to Damascus to be significant. However, from the coming reports from Damascus, they are the armed forces of that are loyal to al-Assad. They are leaving their positions. So it's clearly not stopping. After that, we would be looking at, well, the other locations, the coast, Tartus, and then the Kurdish-controlled areas inside of Syria, and whether they will reach an agreement with them or not, and many things that will happen in the coming days that we'll hopefully continue and cover.
lots to upload and also to download. Just kidding. Today's video, I'll be talking more about what is happening right now in Syria, give you a good idea to find out exactly what is happening between Syria, its neighboring countries like Jordan, Lebanon, and also, of course, Israel. We'll talk about all of this in a second, but before I move on, just to remind you guys, most of my viewers are not subscribed. If you want to get all the updates, consider subscribing. Now, let's take a look at this report first. So, Syrian rebels, according to this report, they clashed with Israeli army. IDF confirms its first action at Golan Heights. So, what happened? Israeli troops assist UN forces in Syria to repel possible attacks by insurgents. IDF on December 7th said it is assisting UN forces in Syrian side of the Golan Heights. Israeli army claimed a UN post near the Syrian town of Hadar was attacked. Quite the irony, isn't it? Just a few days ago, they attacked a UN post in Lebanon. And we have testimony, eyewitness, and social media videos, several of them, accusing Israel of violating basic human right, basic international law, basic, just everything basic about humanity. They broke all the laws. In Lebanon, when they targeted UN members, and remember, Italy, Spain, all of these countries, they were protesting. Even countries who supported Israel, even though they're committing genocide, they spoke against Israel. They said this is unacceptable. And we have seen how French Macron, he was roaring against Israel. Oh, he cannot do this in Lebanon. And now, lo and behold, we see that Israel is protecting UN. Why? Because they're panicking. They do not know what the future holds. And therefore, this is what is coming on the news, that they are now protecting UN, the very one they tried to destroy. Now, let's take a look at this particular other video from Erdogan. So far, we have seen him keeping silent for the most part. But now he's making it absolutely clear that he wants Bashar al-Assad to be gone, because he approached Bashar al-Assad several times, or maybe hundreds of times in the past throughout this conflict in Syria, to negotiate, to come to a political negotiation. Assad said to Turkish President Erdogan, F you, I don't care. Who are you? Who are you? I'm going to MBS, I'm going to Mohammed bin Zayed, I'm going to Putin, I'm going to Iran. I keep you in my pocket. So he said in this particular video that I hope now the Syrian rebel will punish you. Now take a look.
İdlib, Hama ve Humus, hedef tabii Şam. Muhaliflerin bu yürüyüşü şu an itibariyle devam ediyor. Biz de bunu gerek istihbarat gerekse...
Well, I mean, I cannot blame anybody for Assad's fall except himself. He is the downfall for his own doings. His downfall is for his own doings. Now, let's take a look at some other news here coming from the Israeli forces, and they are now saying this: Syrian rebels take areas near Israeli border. So, in other words, Zionists, they're panicking. IDF warned them not to turn in our direction, quote unquote, in our direction. I just want to actually show you this from...
They're not panicking. That's a play to steal more land.
The news here, Times of Israel, they posted this article just a few hours ago, talking about how Israel is feeling, nervous about the whole situation, and they have said that the IDF, they are now assisting UN force to repel the attack. The Israeli military said Saturday evening that it was helping United Nations forces on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights repel an attack by the gunmen near the town of Hadar, close to the Israeli border. We know that Golan Heights was given to Israel by Donald Trump, and that place right now is coming under attack by these rebels. And then we also have news. It basically says the terse statement coming from a Zionist came after the military announced, so the ITF, they have announced Saturday that it was further bolstering its forces in the Golan Heights, after already announcing on Friday that it was deploying additional ground and air troops there. In other words, Zionists are panicking so much that they're not happy with just ground forces They are now deploying additional troops and air force too. So where this fear is coming from all of a sudden? Well, when they were fighting against Hezbollah, I did not see that for sure, because with Hezbollah, they know the game. ITF know the game with Hezbollah, their abilities, how much they can cause damage to Israel. But with this particular group, they have absolutely no clue. This is now a, what do you call, uncharted territory for Israel, for the Zionists. They are preparing for the worst. They do not know what to expect next. And this is where things get very, very interesting at the same time. The reinforcement troops will enable the strengthening of defenses in the area and the preparation of the troops for various scenarios in the area. So various scenarios, what does it mean? What does it mean when they say, the Zionist military say various scenarios? It means there could be an attack, a ground attack by these rebels directly into Israel. The one they have seen coming from Jordan during the conflict with the Hezbollah. Jordanian, even Saudi Arabian one national, he took up arms against them. Now this was contained by both Jordanian government and also obviously Lebanon just wanted to use Hezbollah against Israel. But now there is absolutely no one in power. They do not know who will send what next against Israel. There is this uncertainty in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu, meanwhile, was convening the security cabinet on Saturday. So they're panicking so much. Now they're calling for meetings and discussion to discuss the deployments in Syria, according to a statement from his office. So what they discuss when Netanyahu convened his cabinet? They discussed the developments in Syria, just the development in Syria. What is happening? We do not know. Israel is reportedly preparing for the possibility that Syrian President Assad's regime may collapse, and it did just few minutes ago, I believe. Assad is gone. The city, Damascus, fell into the hand of these rebels. Amid the dramatic advances by rebel forces in recent days, CNN reported Saturday that the U.S. was seeing an increased possibility that the regime could collapse within days. It did, citing a source who said the president was nowhere to be found in Damascus and may possibly have fled. He is in Russia right now, according to this report. I just want to actually play this video, if I could. Take a listen.
Publication by Isabel Coles and Summer said notes that as of December 6th, Bashar al-Assad remained in Syria. Although last week his children and wife went to Russia, and his sons-in-law to the United Arab Emirates. As the anti-regime armed groups reach Homs city center and pressure on...
So basically, Assad is gone. He is most likely in Russia. We do not know where he is. He could be in Iran. We do not know. But what we do know is that he's not in Damascus. Now, let's take a look at this particular other report here. Basically talking about how these countries are feeling so nervous, especially Jordan, Lebanon, and other countries, that they have actually closed their border crossing with Syria. Jordan has closed its only passenger and commercial border crossing into Syria. The interior minister said on Friday. A Syrian army source told Reuters that armed groups had been fighting at Syria's Nasib border crossing into Jordan. So you can imagine these armed groups are going hayward. They have no direction, nothing, no instruction from the upper echelon of the authority, whatever they have, because these people are now targeting whatever need to be targeted in order to reach to these countries, to go to Jordan, to go to Lebanon, and then go to Israel. Why I say this? Well, it is because these people, these groups are not going to be staying in Syria forever. Don't make this mistake that these rebels, especially now that we know some of these fighters are not from Syria itself. They did not come here just to liberate Damascus, just to get rid of Assad regime. They have more motives. We do not know what they are, but these Syrian groups, they're not comprised of just Syrian people. They are from Kazakhstan, they're from even Afghanistan, some reports said. We do not know, but it is not just about Syria. It is more about Syria. And it is more about other countries. A Syrian army source told Reuters, so this is what is happening. Armed groups, quote unquote, who infiltrated the crossing attacked Syrian army posts stationed there. So again, Syrian army source, they said they opened fire. All of a sudden, we do not know who these people are. They're just gunmen. He said dozens of trailers and passengers were now stranded near the area. Jordan's interior minister said Jordanians and Jordanian trucks would be allowed to return via the crossing, known as the Jabr crossing, on the Jordanian side, while no one would be allowed to cross into Syria. So Jordan is now panicking. Who is the king of Jordan? Abdullah, right? He's panicking that his people could actually revolt against him. Therefore, he's making it absolutely sure that no one would be allowed to cross into Syria from Jordan. Because we have seen in Jordan a lot of protest against the government for supplying aids and what I mean, different kind of even goods to Israel. And Jordanian people, they said, we do not want that to happen. Now that Syria is unstable, this revolution could have a domino effect, and it could reach to Jordan, that has the potential to overthrow Abdullah, King Abdullah. Is it Abdullah? Yeah. And we might see it could reach even to Egypt. So all of these countries, the leadership, they're panicking, they're shaking because of the possibility that they could all be overthrown. What happened in 2011, don't make mistake, several of the leaders from Muammar Gaddafi to Tunisian president to even Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak, all of these were overthrown. Now they know that this is not just about Syria, guys. These rebel groups could inspire, encourage, and even take part in overthrowing these governments. And therefore, Israel and all of these countries are panicking, because when Mohammed Morsi was in power in Egypt, Israel could not even breathe properly. They were so uncomfortable because Morsi threatened Israel with action. And now they're seeing that same possibility coming true, because Egyptian people, they're also rising up against the corruption of who? Of this guy Sisi. Guys, this is just the beginning of what we will be seeing coming in the long run. Also on Friday, Lebanon's General Security Directorate said, so this is coming from Lebanon, that the country was closing all land borders crossings with Syria except for a main one that links Beirut with the Syrian capital Damascus. So again, they are taking all the precaution they can in order to stop any kind of infiltration into the country. The decision by the security agency in charge of border crossings came up hours after an Israeli airstrike damaged the Arida border crossing with Syria in North Lebanon, days after it was reopened. So Arida crossing is so important, it was so vital, that I would argue, because of this airstrike from Israel on this bridge, Arida border crossing, Hezbollah could not intervene in Syria. I would even argue that. I mean, we know logistically it is not possible for Hezbollah to come into Syria and fight. Let alone fighting, they cannot even come to Syria right now in this situation. But because of that border crossing that is being destroyed, Arida border crossing, Hezbollah, their hope to rescue Assad was over. Separately, Israel's military said in a statement it planned to reinforce its forces stationed in the Golan Heights. Okay, so Israel military said in a statement it planned to reinforce, guys, reinforce. This is the first time we are seeing who were in this area so far in Golan Heights with the Israeli border. Russian, not Iranian, Russian troops. And they were living in peace with the ITF, Israeli terrorist forces. Russian forces, ITF, they were getting along very well. You live in your area, I live in my area, don't fight. Now, Israel is so terrified that not only they're feeling this nervousness, but also they're sending reinforcements to protect the area, because Golan Heights is the target of the local militant groups. They want to take over Golan Heights, not from coming from Syrian, but also coming from Egypt and elsewhere. This area is always very, very volatile and comes under attack regularly. Now, because of these rebels, all of these groups may gather together and attack these areas along with the Golan Heights borders with Israel. Okay, so where civil war was reignited, between the government forces and militants. The statement said it was, quote unquote, monitoring developments and is prepared for all scenarios, offensive and defensive alike. So offensive and defensive. So they know, Israel knows that these rebels are coming after them today or tomorrow. It's just a matter of time. Now let's take a look at what this guy he said about this situation. Don the Khan, he basically said, I'm hereby demanding that US do not get involved in the conflict between Syria, Russia, Iran. This is not our fight. We should not send one penny to Damascus or any other party involved. We cannot let the warmongers in the White House succeed in starting World War III. Okay, first thing first, Donald Trump, your country doesn't have the money, nor does it have the weapons to supply to any country anymore after the supply of weapons and billions of dollars to Israel. According to military analysts, US's military assets had been depleted in a quite significant number. Therefore, Donald Trump's rhetoric makes sense that US, even if they want to help any country to protect its interest, including in Syria, they cannot. It is not possible for US to give a blank check to any country for good, like they did with Israel. So now Donald Trump is saying, oh, we don't want to fight anybody. It's their matter. Well, the bottom line is that you don't have the money anymore. You do not have the morale anymore. You have seen how Israel is getting defeated in Gaza every single day. I want you to take a listen to what he said here.
Just as importantly, bringing back empowerment will give us a crucial tool with which to obliterate the deep state, drain the swamp, and starve the warmongers, these people that want wars all over the place, killing. They love killing. And the globalists out of our government. We're going to get the warmongers and the globalists out of our government.
Okay, they love killing. This is exactly what US is been doing for decades. Donald Trump is coming out as a saint. US is
just
a saint.
As importantly, bringing
we're angels. Unbelievable. Now we also have this report here. Somebody posted, actually from BRICS News. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump demands the United States to stay out of Syria and avoid getting involved. Quote, the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight, right? This is not your fight because you cannot fight even if you want, because you have given a blank check to Israel Zionists that they have wasted 100%. Now, you have this Donald Trump talking about Syria, how he was looting Syrian oil. Let's take a listen.
And then they say he left troops in Syria. You know what I did? I left troops to take the oil. I took the oil. The only troops I have are taking the oil. They're protecting the oil. I took over.
We're taking the oil. We're not taking
well,
the oil.
Maybe we will. Maybe we won't.
You're protecting the facility.
I don't know. Maybe we should take it. But we have the oil right now. The United States has the oil. So they say he left troops.
Unbelievable. Take the oil. We're going to leave forces to take the oil. I mean, people who support Assad, where are you guys? Syrian assets, natural resources are being looted by these people, the Western countries, on Assad's watch. And you talk about Assad protecting Assad. Assad is real. I mean, he's the butcher of Syrian people anyways, but then he doesn't even have the gut, the spine to protect these oil fields from being looted by America. Now, obviously, people also don't know that this is Syria. So I'm not going to be showing the whole thing, but this is Syria in ruins. 300,000 civilian men, women, and children have been killed. Millions more displaced. So these people, this person, his name is David Wood, he's criticizing for Muslims to not stand up against Assad regime. He said the reason why Muslims are not standing up against Assad is because he's a Muslim. But he said if it happened with Gaza, and it did, then Muslim will be standing up and they will be protesting and all that, which is true. A lot of Muslims, they are very hypocritical when it comes to supporting Bashar al-Assad. They say, oh, if you don't support Assad, then you're basically against Palestine. No, I am for Palestine. Guys, October 7th happened because of the oppression against the Palestinian people, right? For decades of oppression. What happened in Syria on November the 27th is for the exact reason, oppression for decades against the Syrian people. both by Bashar al-Assad and his father. So no, we are not against resistance. We are pro-resistance, and this is why I am here, to protect, even if I can, one life getting killed in Palestine, in Gaza, in Syria, and everywhere on earth. I do not want fighting between groups and parties.
My friends, rarely in history do we witness such a military debacle as the one the Syrian army went through last week. And the collapse was complete. Countless Syrian army units simply ran away from their combat positions.
Cowards! Our men flee the battlefield!
Not only that, but they also abandoned all their weapons, ammunition, but also their precious tanks, artillery, armored vehicles. They left everything behind. And now they're using these captured tanks and BMPs against their former owners. In the end, this is what allowed rebel forces to capture and secure Aleppo in only 4 days. Aleppo has fallen.
All hope is failing, my lord!
Hama has fallen, and rebel columns are now heading towards Homs. The question is, where are they going to stop?
Damascus, Orens. Damascus.
In other words, we can say that this halal blitzkrieg by the rebels was like kicking down a rotten tree. But who are these rebels? French media made sure for you to understand as clearly as possible who sponsored this offensive. Here from France 24, Syrian jihadists and their Turkish-backed allies, or Le Monde, Turkey-backed jihadists. Contrary to regular insurgent forces, the ones that led the surprise offensive looked like a professional military. Their infantrymen were very well equipped. Entire armored units, tanks, BMPs, motorcycles, artillery batteries, and full-on drone detachments. Where did they get access to all this?
But they never going to show you that part on the news. They want people to think there's a ragtag militia, AKs, and sandals seize Syria. That's a lie.
In the end, while Russia was busy in Ukraine and Hezbollah in South Lebanon, Turkey sent its minions forward and they just sniped Assad's army. No! The sudden collapse of the Syrian army is also a painful blow to Russia's image. Remember when Ukraine announced that it was preparing for a new offensive? Nobody expected it to happen in Syria. Look at the uniforms of the rebels. They look familiar, eh? While the others have blue or green identification. You almost fooled us, Zelensky. Almost. Now, for you to truly understand the significance of this collapse, we will have to go through a detailed step-by-step analysis of military operations, but also of the geopolitical situation that led to these events. Welcome to History Legends, and here are the latest news of the Syrian civil war. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. As you know, some of my videos have been targeted with limited or no ads. So make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped, and welcome to the headquarters. Before I can start talking about military operations, here's a quick recap of the geopolitical situation in the region. Now I know you guys like to jump straight to the action, so to help you I added the chapters below. Long story short, the Syrian civil war started in 2011 as part of the Arab Spring. At first, government security forces and the Syrian Arab army were struggling. The regime of Bashar al-Assad was saved by the direct intervention of Hezbollah, Iran, and Russia. Soon enough, the focal point of this war took place around Aleppo, Syria's second largest city after the capital, Damascus. In December 2016, Syrian Arab army units cleared Aleppo from rebel forces after 4.5 years of fighting. However, in August 2016, the Turkish troops intervened directly into the Syrian civil war. I made an entire video about it last year. If you're interested, the link is in the description below. But here are some samples of what I said. In February 2015, Turkey launched its first Han Solo military campaign abroad since 1974 with Operation Shah Euphrates, when an armored convoy of 600 troops was tasked to transfer the tomb of Suleiman Shah 30 kilometers to the north. It's important to mention that the majority of the officers of the Syrian SNA rebels are in fact ethnic Turkmen, one of the many minorities of Syria which have historical ties to Turkey, making for a total of 10,500 Turkish soldiers in the greater Idlib region. In 2017, the Al-Qaeda-related group called Al-Nusra from Idlib rebranded into Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which we will call HTS in this video. To break the deadlock in December 2019, the Syrian Arab army, supported by Russian aerial assets, launched a massive offensive west of Aleppo, which allowed them to regain a lot of territory. In March 2020, the presidents of Turkey and Russia, Erdogan and Putin, agreed to a ceasefire. And this should have been the end of the story. Bashar al-Assad managed to stay in power, but Syria was a shattered nation, with the government having lost control of huge parts of the country. Additionally, the effects of Western sanctions on the country caused a deep economic crisis that was worsening month after month. People had a hard time finding basic necessities, and the lack of fuel halted the steady flow of goods. This economic crisis also impacted the military. For example, soldiers who, for the most part, were conscripts, were paid about $30 a month. Most units stood somewhere between 25 and 30% strength, because soldiers bribed their officers to stay at home so they could go work instead of guarding an outpost somewhere in the desert. Meanwhile, higher-ranking officers forgot to report broken vehicles so they could resell extra spare parts and fuel on the black market. Syria's security apparatus was falling apart. Most of the Russian military personnel in Syria had redeployed to Ukraine, and many units of the Wagner PMC were transferred to Africa. Additionally, due to fears of a coup, the popular and charismatic commander of the 25th Tiger Forces Division, Suhail al-Hassan, was replaced and sent to command some 500-man strong Special Forces Battalion. Meanwhile, during those years, so from 2020 to 2024, HTS eliminated all competing jihadist groups in Idlib. In the end, 30,000 fighters in Idlib were directly under the umbrella of HTS. Rumors was that at one point they wanted to rebrand once again into 50 Shades of Jihad. No prisoners! No prisoners! Additionally, in the last years, they also received a lot of new military equipment. It literally just fell on their lap. Here from 2020, an M113 APC with Turkish camo. July 2021, we see some of their troops operating an M114 155mm howitzer that came straight from Turkish army stocks. October 2021, another M113, once again from Turkey. Are we now allowed to call them a Turkish proxy or not? And of course, all these artillery pieces and armored vehicles were just meant to secure the ceasefire agreement. At last, from a political perspective, in late December 2022, Turkish and Syrian diplomats finally met to come up with a deal. However, after more than a year and a half, negotiations reached a dead end, mainly because Bashar al-Assad insisted on a full Turkish withdrawal from Syria, while Russia was busy in Ukraine and Hezbollah with the IDF in South Lebanon. Turkey and its allies were plotting for their next move. Now you might ask, how come nobody saw this coming? So I thought it was important to analyze the events in the weeks leading up to the rebel offensive. Just take a look at what the SOHR wrote on the 4th of September. HTS and other factions are preparing to launch a large-scale attack on regime forces positions in the Russian-Turkish agreement area. And check out what Al Jazeera reported on the 13th of November. The Syrian opposition is preparing for the Battle of Aleppo and the Syrian regime is mobilized. Battle plans were known. The objective was known. How can we explain the collapse of the Syrian army and everything that happened? You have to remember that on the 1st of October, most Hezbollah forces were transferred to South Lebanon to counter the Israeli invasion. This significantly weakened the posture of the Syrian army. 1 week later, Russian telegram channel Rybar reported the following. The Iranian government publication Tasnim, citing sources in Syria, reports that pro-Turkish forces in the Idlib de-escalation zone are preparing to intensify fighting against the Syrian government. With all these warning signs, the Russian command in Syria did not wait. On the 16th of October, the Russian Air Force carried at least 25 airstrikes in the Idlib region. For days in a row, Russian fighter aircraft and helicopters pummeled rebel positions. Between the 6th and the 7th of November, 34 FPV drone attacks were launched against rebel forces. Over 50 Russian drone strikes were carried out during that week alone. This was a new record. Never have so many drones been flying towards Idlib. If the situation could not get more complex, 2 days later, Israel also joined the fireworks with an airstrike 8 kilometers north of Sarakib, reportedly against Iranian assets. Also on the 9th of November, Turkish artillery shelled a Kurdish checkpoint of the YPG faction north of Manbij. And on the 14th, now it's Syrian artillery that bombarded rebel positions west of Aleppo. 3 days later, Idlib rebels posted a video of grenade-dropping drones. In this footage, we see them target a Syrian T-55 and then a T-72 Adra. Russia, Israel, Iran, Turkey. It's a real foursome with heavy loads flying across the room. And Syria will have to clean up the mess because they're hosting the party. While government forces and Idlib rebels bombarded each other. By the 18th of November, the Israeli Air Force destroyed a total of 15 bridges southwest of Homs in order to disrupt communication lines between Syria and Lebanon. 2 days later, on the 20th of November, Israel once again launched a series of airstrikes, this time in the desert town of Palmyra, which caused 108 fatalities, of which 73 were confirmed to be Syrian army soldiers, 15 Hezbollah fighters, and 14 Iran-backed Iraqi militias. During this time, Russian assets on the ground anxiously noticed the movement and accumulation of rebel elements. Syrian intelligence officers expected an offensive since September. All the reports were sent up the hierarchy, but nothing was done. Actually, the Syrian army did redeploy some forces, but not towards Aleppo. More on that later. Between the 24th and 25th of November, Syrian army and Kurdish forces heavily shelled rebel positions in Al-Bab. In response, the SNA opposition forces used some MR-less systems to strike Kurdish positions. That same night, a Kurdish infiltration team carried out a recon in force and stormed an enemy outpost. Reportedly, 15 SNA fighters were KIA and another 5 were captured. However, we don't know what these prisoners revealed during the interrogation. On the 27th of November, the Syrian Observer reported, Netanyahu warns Bashar al-Assad. He specifically warned Assad against allowing weapons to pass through Syria to Hezbollah, saying, "Don't play with fire," and vowing to destroy the Syrian regime if it continued to support Hezbollah. Surprise, surprise, late on the 26th of November.
That was a signal. I remember when he said that, he just said it. That was a signal for the terrorists to advance. Netanyahu gave them the signal. He came on TV and said Bashar al-Assad was playing with fire, and then the rebels attacked.
Israel agreed to a ceasefire in South Lebanon. As the ceasefire came into effect in the first hours of the 27th of November, Idlib rebels launched their offensive against Aleppo.
You don't find that suspicious?
Officially, the offensive led by HTS, called Operation Deterrence of Aggression, was meant for a limited offensive to protect the civilians of Idlib from regime shelling. Are the Turks trolling? Because I've heard this story before. Day 1, the 27th of November. On the eve of the rebel offensive, the map looked approximately like that. In green, you have all the Turkish proxies, with HTS in control of Idlib, with the Syrian National Army or SNA further north in Afrin and all the way to Al-Bab. In yellow, you have the areas controlled by Kurdish militias, and in red, territory controlled by Bashar al-Assad and government forces. In the early hours of the 27th of November, HTS special forces started infiltrating enemy lines. As you can see, these operatives are equipped like a modern military force. In here, you can see them geared up with thermal scopes, which would provide them with a significant advantage while fighting at night. These Spec Ops units pushed deep into enemy lines and ambushed a number of units, like this group of Russian military personnel, who were later confirmed to be Russian drone operators. The first wave consisted of multiple katibas, or detachments in Arabic, of specialized assault squads who trained specifically to open a breach in the first enemy line of defense. In many of the videos that I will show you, what you will immediately notice is how HTS fighters are wearing blue bands on their forehead and arms for identification, while others are also wearing yellow ones. Same thing in this picture, where we see very well equipped soldiers with yellow identification as well. In my opinion, there was some sort of hierarchy. The fighters with blue or yellow bands were part of specialized assault detachments, while the ones without markings were your average typical fighter. With that being said, I also spotted other units wearing green bands and even red ones. Overall, most riflemen are equipped with AKs and PKMs. For example, here's a Bulgarian copy of the PKM in the hands of an ethnic Turkmen from Syria. In the next frame, this truck has a heavy machine gun installed while carrying an entire squad of troops. In terms of individual equipment, here we see an RPG-7, which is a weapon of choice for insurgent forces in the Middle East. And at the back, a Turkish version of the US-made M72 Law anti-tank weapon. In this video, you can see that every second man is equipped with some anti-tank weapon, which they use to breach into walls and buildings. Although these assault detachments are very well equipped, it would not be enough to definitely break through the enemy lines of defense. To this effect, the HTS command created lightly armored katibas. We can see these assault detachments enter Al-Qarar APCs. Those are locally made armored personnel carriers built on top of pickup trucks, which can transport at least half a dozen men. As you can see in this footage, many units were seen driving around aboard these locally made APCs. But this column was beefed up with the BMP-1, as well as this technical with a ZU-23-2 autocannon installed on it. Here's a glimpse into one of these armored katibas. One technical, 4 Karar APCs, one M113 APC, and they even have a captured T-72 tank to spearhead their assault. But simply upon contact, these armored assault detachments crushed the poorly trained Syrian conscripts holding the first line of outposts. The rebel offensive was also supported by motorized detachments, mostly composed of pickup trucks and technicals like the one you can see on screen, whose armament ranges from Chinese-made autocannons to machine guns and even Iranian-made recoilless guns. The same way centuries ago the Ottomans had regular formations supported by irregular light cavalry units called the Bashi-Bazouk. But this time they traded their horses for Toyotas. At this point, it's very hard to mention any war in the Middle East without saying the word Toyota. While assault detachments engaged the first line of Syrian army outposts, the HTS Falcons Brigade launched swarms of FPV drones to pin down enemy forces at the rear and help for recon purposes as well, which provided the HTS with a complete overview of the battlefield in real time. In this propaganda video, they even showed how they set up an entire line of production of FPV drones, just like in Ukraine. My friends, everybody's learning except NATO armies. In this footage, you can see kamikaze drones target exposed infantry units, some of them not even aware that an enemy offensive was underway. HTS drones also struck various bunkers, fortified positions, and trench lines, while others dropped grenades on rooftops and dugouts. More importantly, these drone strikes also took out a variety of armored vehicles in a radius of up to 10 kilometers. Remember, those are the same tactics that the Azeri forces used against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. On top of smaller drones, HTS also launched a number of turbojet-powered kamikaze drones whose payloads were much bigger. As you can imagine, this must have seriously impacted the reaction time and morale of government forces, as all the troops were essentially pinned down and could not mutually support each other. At least we can see how the Syrian army attempted to camouflage its parked vehicles under nets or even on the buildings' garages. Hold on, now that I'm thinking about it, how come HTS drone operators knew the exact location of all these armored vehicles? And it's not as if they sent dozens of recon drones in the weeks leading up to the offensive. Or maybe they did without being detected. I mean, all the fortifications, trench works, and bastions were clearly visible using satellite imagery. And what is obvious is that all the defensive positions were fully exposed from above, and thus extremely vulnerable to drones. Additionally, these trench bastions could hardly support each other. If we look on the map, the HTS command attacked along 3 axes. One column penetrated towards Road 62, with another thrust towards Road 60. The objective of both of these groupings was Aleppo. This main attack was combined with a smaller operation in the south in the vicinity of Sarakib. Additionally, the combination of these 2 attacks was probably meant at capturing this entire portion of the M5 highway, thus prevent government forces from sending reinforcements to Aleppo. From all the information I gathered, it seems HTS assault detachments carried 1 attack south of Road 62 against the village of Al-Huta, combined with another one north of the road against the town of Kubtan al-Jabal. There we see some of the troops that captured the settlement. Most of them have yellow and blue armbands, and the only vehicle we see is a motorcycle. Once again, motorcycle units are perfect to maneuver units very quickly from point A to B. Additionally, because of this video, it seems local tribesmen of the Sunni al-Bakara tribe took up arms and switched sides in support of HTS. Soon enough, Syrian army units found themselves completely overwhelmed left and right. In this video that went viral, we see a squad of 12 Syrian army soldiers running away across open field. If we try to geolocate it on the map, here's the town of Kubtan al-Jabal, and here's the road, meaning the soldiers fled in this direction. From Al-Huta, the rebels then moved on to the larger settlement of Anjara. We know this because of the following video, where we see one of the fighters praying next to a statue at the center of the town. There, the HTS rebels captured numerous weapons, including this T-72 tank, probably the same we could see in this video. Meanwhile, their Habibis seem to have captured yet another tank in the same sector. Now in the area of Road 60, there was very little information I could work with, but we can guess that from a tactical perspective, the attack must have been pretty similar to the one on Road 62. But I did find this footage, and perhaps it can help us put the pieces together of what actually happened. In this video, there is a rebel column led by a tank and followed by 2 APCs pushing along a road. Now what you see here is actually the HTS command center. What's crazy is that at some point they spot 3 Syrian army soldiers. The intelligence officers take pictures of these guys and send the info directly to their troops on the ground. Seconds later, the tank turns its turret. This APC disembarks its riflemen, and an explosion occurs right next to the government troops, which then run away. Look, the immersion is complete. We even got a glimpse at HTS nutrition. What I think is that the rebels regrouped in the village of Kafrtal, and from there, they pushed southwards. This is what probably allowed them to reach Base 46. The base takes its name from the resident 46th Regiment of the 15th Special Forces Division, but it was also guarded by Iranian-backed militias and pro-Assad Palestinian fighters. HTS forces broke through the compound by detonating an SVBIED, a kamikaze vehicle packed with explosives, but less technologically advanced since it actually has a human driver. HTS assault detachments slowly started encircling the Syrian army base. Here we see rebel stormtroopers jump out of the Karar APC, and then we see them running along the perimeter wall, while their vehicle crashed into the wall, opening a breach. Then the fighters rush into the base, completely overwhelming the defenders. Within minutes, the base was theirs, with HTS fighters emptying all the warehouses looking for these loot boxes, thus providing rebel units with precious weapons and ammo supplies. Look, I saw some videos of the aftermath of this battle that I can't show you, but I'm not sure many prisoners were actually taken. Throughout the 27th of November, reports arrived of Syrian army reinforcements being rushed towards western Aleppo. It was pure cope because in reality it was the complete opposite. One HTS drone managed to record an entire company of 150 Syrian army soldiers packed into a crowd before harassing them with grenades. And it seems unlikely to me that they're walking in this formation towards the front. Meanwhile, the units that were motorized fled even faster to the rear. Meanwhile, 28 kilometers to the south, HTS also carried a limited-scale attack on Sarakib. The small number of units deployed during this attack made it seem as if it was some diversion. Nonetheless, in response, Syrian artillery units shelled the entire countryside around Sarakib. As night fell in Aleppo, the rebels managed to capture yet another regime-fortified position. On day one, the defeat of the Syrian army was total. Entire units fled as they abandoned all their weapons and vehicles behind. They did not even bother to detonate ammo depots. All the military equipment was left there intact, ready to be recycled by HTS. By the end of the day, HTS had captured 18 villages and the military base number 46. Within 24 hours, Turkey's negotiating positions have sharply strengthened. Another Turkish trademark was the heavy use of foreign Muslim mercenaries. There were numerous reports of fighters from Central Asia, Uzbeks specifically from the Fergana Valley, but also Tajiks, Turkmen, Chinese Uyghurs, even Chechens.
Hey, yo, what the?
Why did the Syrian army collapse? On the surface, we could say that the economic crisis took its toll on the military. Many vehicles could have simply been abandoned due to a lack of spare parts and even fuel. Certainly. But we cannot forget that barbarians can only capture a citadel if someone opens the gate to them. So I will lay out some of the reasons that I think led to the collapse of the Syrian army. As part of reason number one, we cannot exclude the possible bribery of senior officers and generals. That could explain the lack of reactivity of the Syrian army despite all the warning signs. Even more troubling, in the summer of 2024, the elite 25th Tiger Force Division deployed key assets to fight insurgents in the Syrian desert. Almost the entire 5th Assault Corps was transferred all the way down south near Jordan. That's not all. Local defense units of the Shia towns of Nubul and Zahra, who are highly experienced, were also sent south to the desert. And I'm not done, because the Liwa Fatimun Iranian-backed Shia militias were also sent to the southern border. How come all of a sudden, this summer, some of the most well-trained, motivated, and capable formations were all removed from the Aleppo sector, and especially not called back as everyone noticed military preparations in Idlib? Reason number two is similar, but it is attributed to treason. Disclaimer, what I'm going to tell you is speculation, but there's ground to believe that someone called Haj Merah has betrayed the Assad government. He's one of the leaders of the Bedouin al-Bakara tribe. Long story short, the al-Bakara tribe was split between support of the opposition and the Assad regime. Haj Merah formed a brigade of the pro-Assad elements and fought against opposition forces. Very well, actually. He was also so close to Iran that he even converted to the Shia faith. However, it seems that lately, he got back in touch with the al-Bakara tribesmen in Idlib, the ones part of the opposition. In the end, supposedly, Haj Merah and his men could have smuggled a number of HTS operatives from Idlib inside the Aleppo region. And we should not consider this story far-fetched, especially since we saw that members of this tribe took up arms against the government right after HTS attacked. And it's not a surprise either that some of the al-Bakara areas of control are located right at the border between HTS and government forces. They could have definitely opened the gates. It's possible that other Bedouin tribes like the Al-Babtush, Altai, and Al-Kedat also joined al-Bakara in their treason. On top of that, we can believe that some of these units that were smuggled inside Aleppo could have created a number of sleeping cells that would have been activated on D-Day to cause panic and chaos behind enemy lines. Such psyops work especially well in the fog of war and with the lack of information. Recruitment for these cells could have been facilitated by the general discontent towards Bashar al-Assad because of the economic crisis, and that their lives could possibly be better under HTS control. Now, if we follow this logic, we can believe these operatives and sleeping cells stormed critical military headquarters and command centers. On the 29th of November, it was reported that the Iranian Brigadier General of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps was KIA, as well as Assad's military security branch in Aleppo, General Ahmad Qudr al-Ali. Those are only the ones we know of, but maybe there were others. Maybe some were captured. There were also reports of jamming of communications. even fake orders of withdrawal, which further must have increased the feeling of isolation and panic for frontline units. Another cause of the Syrian army's failure was the lack of any type of defense in depth. After HTS forces broke through the first line of trench works and fortifications, Syrian army units had nowhere to fall back to reorganize and counterattack. Day 2, the 28th of November. After breaking through, the grouping on Road 62 then split up. One detachment attacked to the north towards Anadan, while another pushed along Road 62 straight towards Aleppo. The grouping on Road 60 also split up like splinters. The main detachments continued along the main road towards Aleppo, while motorized columns spread across the countryside going as far as Azarpa and Al-Ais. That's when they captured army warehouses in Minas Tirith, Miznas. There they found numerous ATGMs and even artillery pieces like these 122mm Gvazdika self-propelled howitzers. These jihadists know that when you find the heavy howitzers, you just grab them. In the south, in the sector of Sarakib, it's the group Ansar al-Tawhid that led the charge. This time we even have a closer look at all the military equipment they had available. Their attack was supported by multiple artillery units, like this crew of Chinese Uyghurs, operating a 130mm D46 field gun and 122mm D30 howitzer using Iranian-made shells. One of the main objectives was Sarakib proper, as heavy fighting took place there. But while a number of Syrian army units were pinned down in that town, rebel jihadist assault detachments then stormed the border area south of Sarakib and captured the villages of Jubas and Dadir. Here you can see some of the men that captured this village of Dadir. I don't know, to me these guys look like mostly peaceful youth from South Rotterdam. In this footage we see explosives being dropped from a drone on a Syrian army tank, as well as on the soldiers right next to it. Meanwhile, we also got an HFPS, or Halal First-Person Shooter experience, on the attack on the nearby village of Kafr Batih. We see an APC driving against a wall. Then it follows the tracks made by some previous vehicles. Then it crosses a field with a lot of small trees. And to its left, then we see 3 big cylinders. I couldn't hold myself but to geek around. I looked all across the map and I actually managed to geolocate this exact attack. Here we see these same cylinders north of the village of Kafr Batir. If we reconstruct the attack, the rebels first captured Dadir, and from there they pushed along the main road towards Kafr Batir. More specifically, they drove parallel to the main road across the fields in between those houses all the way to this industrial sector. Then they drove past the cylinders, which you can see on screen. Then the infantry component was disembarked somewhere in the sector and engaged enemy forces. By the end of day 2 of the offensive, Islamist rebel forces had effectively taken control of this entire portion of the M5 highway that was linking Aleppo to the south of the country. It also became clear that the rebel offensive could not be stopped solely with airstrikes, as Russian and Syrian fighter aircraft carried one sortie after another, but it was just not enough. Day 3, the 29th of November. From all the videos I saw geolocated west of Aleppo, there was not one moment where a Syrian army unit actually stood its ground. The Syrian army in that sector literally melted down. In the south, rebel motorized columns had already pushed 10 kilometers beyond Sarakib. In that sector, it was a Chechen crew operating Turkish-made 120mm HY-112 mortars that supported the rebel offensive, while guiding their strikes in real time with drone footage. Another of such artillery batteries was manned by Uyghurs with a Turkish 155mm M114 howitzer. A couple hours later, we see another unit of foreign Muslim mercenaries, this time composed of Chechen fighters entering one of these Karar APC. Then this motorized column headed out for a night raid, where we see them engage a Syrian T-72 tank. They seem to have been victorious because moments later, they recorded vehicles and ammunition they had captured. And it's clear to see the tactical edge that HTS commandos had over Syrian forces due to their use of thermal scopes and NVGs. But those are not easy to fight with. You need a lot of training. Could it be that some of these men are veterans of the Russian armed forces? Now, as for the situation west of Aleppo, overall from an operational perspective, HTS forces of Tactical Grouping Road 60 and Road 62 linked up in one of the western suburbs of Aleppo, from where they converged as a unified force straight into the urban area. By 4 p.m., rebel forces had officially reached the outskirts of Aleppo. Here you can see the first rebel formations to step foot inside Aleppo proper. And that's how the cadets of the Assad Military Engineering School found themselves encircled. In Khan Assal, a T-55 was left behind by pro-Assad forces. The rebels even got their hands on a BMP-2. Meanwhile, the first ATGM teams took position on rooftops like this one equipped with a US-made BGM-71 TOW. Same thing for these guys operating one of the captured Russian Kornet ATGMs. And in the next frame, we see how they managed to destroy a Syrian army tank that was in a hold-down position. At the same time, rebel columns flooded the entire countryside south of Aleppo, 10 kilometers in this direction and 12 kilometers along the M5 highway. In that area, it was reported that 4 Syrian army tanks were captured in Khan Tuman. Nearby entire Syrian army units fled as they feared being encircled and captured by the enemy. If things could not be more critical for the Syrian Arab army, skirmishes suddenly broke out south of Al-Bab, 30 kilometers northeast of Aleppo. As you can see, SNA rebels started bringing their armored vehicles to the front, showing that an attack was imminent. If these positions collapsed, it would be GG, well played. Day 4, the 30th of November. I think day 4 was perhaps the worst for the Syrian government. The defensive perimeter of Aleppo had been completely breached. Rebel Islamist forces had crossed the Quake River and had taken control of the Aleppo citadel, where some of these soldiers now started raising the Turkish flag. Coincidence? I don't think so. It felt as if not a single Syrian army unit was present to defend the city. What happened? Did they all flee? Were they ordered to withdraw? I can't tell you, but fact is, HTS entered into an empty city. What also became obvious was the wide array of mercenaries paid by Turkey in the ranks of HTS. Here's an Albanian volunteer of the Jemati Alban unit. In this one, a volunteer from Pakistan next to a captured tank. Meanwhile, in this one, former TLB fighters from Afghanistan are seen operating a locally made MRLS. They should become the basis of a movie called A Fistful of Liras. HTS rebels were present at the Al-Qura roundabout in the heart of Aleppo. There, they immediately started tearing down statues related to the Assad family. Other rebel troops were seen everywhere in town celebrating their stunning victory. Listen, Habibi, I need a break. I need some chicken. Due to the complete collapse of government security forces, Kurdish SDF militias intervened. That's how Kurdish reinforcements have entered the Sheikh Maksud neighborhood of Aleppo and other Kurdish populated areas of the region. Other Kurdish militias regrouped in the Aleppo International Airport, where they covered the exodus of thousands of civilians, because they knew exactly what awaited them at the hands of Turkish proxies. However, at the same time, what surprised me is how from all the videos inside Aleppo, a lot of residents stayed in the city and acted as if it was just another day. Now, if we zoom out, all the villages along Road 214 were abandoned by government forces. Meanwhile, the Syrian rebels completely overwhelmed Kurdish positions south of Al-Bab. One group pushed as far as to reach the M4 highway, thus cutting off Aleppo from the east, while other motorized columns penetrated deeper and deeper across the countryside. One of these units captured abandoned Syrian army armored vehicles in the village of Abu Jabar. It was an unmitigated disaster. Forward elements of rebel forces were spotted 23 kilometers ahead of the contact line, meaning they had effectively cut the highway linking Aleppo to Raqqa. Meanwhile, the highway linking Aleppo to the south was also cut, meaning Aleppo was now fully isolated. In the south, after the fall of Sarakib, once again the Syrian army evaporated, and that's where we saw the rebels make the most gains in a single day. All the villages in a 45-kilometer radius of Sarakib were captured and under their control. Not only that, Syrian army units in Marat al-Numan were completely overwhelmed. This time, it was a unit composed of Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Uyghurs that led the assault. As you can see in this video, this squad entered a BMP-1, while others were sitting inside a truck. The vehicles then disembarked the soldiers, which then ran into the town. To the right, a Karar APC drives by, after which the riflemen proceeded to mop up the entire settlement as night fell. After the fall of the stronghold, the rebels pushed 40 kilometers along the M5 highway, all the way to the town of Suran on the outskirts of Hama. That should have been another stronghold that should have stopped the jihadists. Instead, local reports then announced the withdrawal of government forces from the town. In turn, the rebels continued all the way to the northern outskirts of Hama aboard their technicals, like these ones equipped with ZU-23 and ZPU-2 autocannons. The attack was spearheaded by this Uyghur battalion, motorcycle squads, and many Al-Qarar APCs for mobility, entire artillery batteries to support the attack, with BMPs and entire assault detachments clearing the city. To me, this looks like a professional fighting force. Others pushed westwards towards the Mediterranean coast, like these troops that filmed themselves in Kalat al-Madik. After days and days of bad news for the Syrian Arab army, it was finally reported that pro-Assad forces managed to create some sort of defensive line 10 kilometers north of Hama, namely soldiers of the Tarmiya regiment of the elite 25th Division. Meanwhile, in Hama proper, numerous Syrian army armored vehicles were spotted by local residents. It seemed that this would be the location of the final showdown between HTS and the Syrian army, the helms deep of the Syrian civil war, because if the stronghold collapsed, then it would be very difficult. After that, it's Homs, and if that falls, the country is literally split in two. In preparation for the final assault, HTS mustered all their drone operators to harass the defenders and destroy all their fortified positions. Day 5, the 1st of December. By day 5, most of Aleppo was under rebel control. They even managed to take control over the Assad Military Engineering Academy. What most likely happened is that they managed to broker a deal with the hundreds of defenders and allowed them to withdraw towards friendly lines. Here you can see some rebel fighters inside this very symbolic compound of the Syrian army. The rest of the city and the northeastern outskirts were taken up by Kurdish militias. But soon enough, they also felt the heat of the enemy offensive, as rebel forces already started converging their armored vehicles to crush this Kurdish salient north of Aleppo centered on Tal Rifat. But it's not looking good for them, especially since in this video we already see rebel fighters at the entrance of the town. And I also fear the worst for all these Kurdish fighters that were captured and that will most likely be handed over directly to Turkish authorities. As for the Kurds in the Sheikh Maqsoud neighborhood, well, they have nowhere to run. So this should be a tough nut to crack for HTS. In turn, HTS offered them these green buses in order to transport all these fighters and their family members to friendly lines. And if they refuse, well, face annihilation. Meanwhile, the rebels that broke through in Al-Bab kicked out the Kurds from a good portion of the Aleppo-Raqqa highway. In that area, 30 kilometers east of Aleppo, rebel forces captured the Koueres military airport. There they captured a number of aircraft, but most importantly, this Panzer air defense system. The shock was that out of nowhere, Al-Safira was now occupied by rebel forces. Here you can see some of these assault detachments pushing across the countryside. By the evening of December 1st, the front more or less stabilized north of Hama. Syrian army mechanized units arrived to reinforce the defense of the city. Additionally, after a counterattack, Syrian army units retook control of Murada and Halfia. The Syrian government and its allies also did not stand still. Reportedly, thousands of Shia militiamen converged towards the Iraqi-Syrian border. As you can see in this video, mostly light infantry on pickup trucks, but at this point any additional help was welcomed. At the same time, it was later reported that they literally stopped at the border. It was also reported that Bashar al-Assad held a meeting with the Iranian foreign minister, who urgently flew to Syria. Apparently, they discussed direct military support from Iran. There's also the possibility of Syria calling the Arab League for help, but that is to be determined. Across Syria, the arrival of these barbarian hordes caused panic among the population, especially among the Alawite and Christian minorities. Many territorial defense units formed out of thin air, composed of army veterans and even simple civilians motivated by patriotic fervor. On their end, the Kurds also called for volunteers to protect their homeland. My friends, this is how Aleppo fell, and how HTS forces caused the complete collapse of the Syrian army. Days 6 to 10, December 2nd to the 6th. After the capture of Aleppo, Commander Jolani called for all civilians to be spared, regardless of their religious faith. Goes to show that even jihadists have to add a little bit of water in their wine if they want to rule. However, they could also play nice for the moment and become more strict as they consolidate power. There were also reports how HTS dispatched their own police units to secure Aleppo while redirecting combat formations to support the ongoing offensive against Hama and not lose momentum. The next day, by the 3rd of December, Jolani, the leader of HTS, finally visited the captured city of Aleppo. Simultaneously, Kurdish militias expanded their area of control south of Raqqa, following the withdrawal of pro-Assad forces. We're actually witnessing a Mexican standoff, where pro-Assad forces, jihadists, and Kurdish militias all oppose each other. Meanwhile, 4 kilometers north of Hama, the Syrian army fortified this hilltop in an attempt to stop the rebel offensive. However, pro-Assad forces were heavily outnumbered, as thousands of rebel reinforcements headed southwards. In this case, we see a unit composed of fighters from Afghanistan and Pakistan, supported by tanks and BMPs. Meanwhile, these Uyghur volunteers managed to destroy a Syrian army BMP with a captured Russian Kornet anti-tank missile somewhere on the northern outskirts of Hama. At the same time, the HTS Falcons Brigade dropped so many loads on the Syrian army that movement became very difficult, added to the numerous MRLS strikes of HTS on enemy strongholds and fortifications. There was a lot of back and forth over the Zain al-Abidin hill, but Syrian army counterattacks faded away and lacked momentum due to the non-stop enemy drone attacks on their concentration of forces. The defense of Hama became desperate when HTS columns started encircling the city from both the west and the east. Pro-Assad forces knew not to allow the two tips to touch, so they had no other choice but to withdraw. While overall the withdrawal was coordinated, this sudden movement left a lot of stragglers behind. There's this video that went viral where we see HTS forces using captured Syrian army vehicles, a column composed of 1 T-72 M1 and 3 BMPs. And these vehicles then attacked this retreating enemy unit. At first, pro-Assad soldiers thought the vehicles were friendly until they started charging at them, ramming their vehicles and firing at point blank. The next day, by the 4th of December, HTS discovered all the military equipment, all the vehicles that the Syrian army had abandoned in Hama. In this case, we see what they found in the HQ of the elite 25th Tiger Forces Division. Even worse, this is what the rebels found in Base 87. At least 20 trucks, BMPs, and truck-mounted rocket artillery systems. At the same time, we can't say the Syrian army did not fight looking at the entrance of this city. HTS then pursued the Syrian army up until the Rastan Bridge, which is one of the only crossing points over the Orontes River. If properly defended, this river could have put a definitive stop to the HTS offensive. However, this hope collapsed 24 hours later. A rebellion broke out in Talbise, thus disrupting Syrian army communication lines. Meanwhile, HTS shock units bypassed the river via Road 45 and flanked the entire Syrian army's line of defense from the east. Upon their entry in Salamia, the rebels were welcomed like liberators. The Syrian army had no other choice but to quickly withdraw all the way to Homs. Meanwhile, in Aleppo, the Kurdish fighters were still in control of the Sheikh Maksud neighborhood. By December 6, forward elements of HTS reached the outskirts of Homs. We can't believe that this is where the decisive battle between the rebels and pro-Assad forces will take place. If Homs falls, then the last stand will take place in the capital, Damascus. Meanwhile, in the south near Dera, a rebellion broke out, and rebels captured a number of Syrian army vehicles that were left behind. At last, on the 7th of December, as both sides brought their forces towards Homs, in the eastern side of the country, Kurdish forces took control of Deir ez-Zor. as well as of the strategic Kamal border crossing point with Iraq. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to
Coffee. Follow me.